I am Stephen Davis, a 68-year-old retired construction worker from Portland, Oregon, and I haven't spoken to my son Michael in 25 years. Not a single word. That all changed last Christmas when I won the lottery for $14 million. Suddenly, my phone lit up with a text from him inviting me to Christmas dinner with his family, after decades of silence just like that. Now, I had to decide what to say to the son who only remembered I existed when I got rich. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you want to find out what I told my son at that Christmas dinner. Trust me, it is not what you might expect. Life was simpler back when I first met Lisa during my sophomore year at Portland State University in 1978. I was studying construction management. She was going for elementary education. We met at the campus coffee shop when I spilled my coffee all over her psychology textbook. Instead of getting angry, she laughed and said it was the most interesting thing that happened in that class. That laugh got me, high and light like wind chimes on a spring day. We dated for 2 years before I proposed on a hiking trip to Multnomah Falls. I had saved for months to buy a modest diamond ring. When I pulled it out at the viewpoint overlooking the falls, her eyes lit up brighter than any gem could. We got married in June 1980 in a small ceremony at her parents' backyard in Beaverton. Nothing fancy, just close family and friends, potluck dinner, and my buddy's band playing cover songs. We bought our first home in 1981, a small 2-bedroom fixer-upper in the Portland suburbs. The roof leaked, the furnace made strange noises, and the previous owners had painted the kitchen a hideous shade of orange. But it was ours. I spent weekends fixing things up while Lisa planted a vegetable garden in the backyard. We were building our life together brick by brick. When Michael was born in 1982, everything changed. The moment the nurse placed him in my arms, this tiny person with Lisa's nose and my chin, I felt something shift inside me. A fierce protectiveness, a love so overwhelming it actually hurt. I promised him right there in that hospital room that I would always be there for him, always protect him. A promise I tried to keep even when the world had other plans. Those early years with Michael were some of the best of my life. I would rush home from work to spend time with him. Weekend mornings were our special time. I would make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs or cars while Lisa slept in. Michael would sit on the kitchen counter, his little legs dangling, helping me mix the batter, which mostly meant getting flour everywhere. When he was 4, I took him fishing for the first time at Timothy Lake. He was more interested in the worms than the fishing, but his excitement when we caught a small trout was something I can still see when I close my eyes. His whole face lit up, and he jumped up and down, nearly tipping our small boat. That night, as we cooked our catch over the campfire, he declared it was the bestest day ever. I coached his t-ball team when he was 5, watching him run the wrong way around the bases, but with such enthusiasm that none of us had the heart to correct him until after his victory lap. Those moments, those small, perfect moments of fatherhood, I collected them like precious stones. Work kept me busy, often too busy. I was foreman at Patterson Construction, working long hours to provide for my family. Construction work in Oregon meant fighting weather deadlines and budget constraints. I would leave before dawn and sometimes return after Michael was in bed. I would peek into his room, watching him sleep sometimes, too tired to even say goodnight properly. I told myself I was doing it for him, for us, but I was missing things too. First words. First steps, moments I can never get back. Lisa worked as a second-grade teacher at Maplewood Elementary. She was a natural with kids, patient and creative in ways I admired. She would come home with stories about her students mimicking their voices and expressions until Michael and I were both laughing. She made our house a home, filling it with art projects, books, and music. We had our traditions: Sunday pancakes, summer camping trips to the Oregon coast or Cascade Mountains, Christmas Eve when we would each open one present before bed. Michael would shake every package, guessing what was inside with increasing wild theories. These rituals anchored our family through busy weeks and stressful times. Money was always tight. Lisa's teaching salary and my construction pay covered the bills, but there wasn't much left over. We started a college fund for Michael when he was born, putting in $25 a month, sometimes skipping dinner out or new clothes to make sure we never missed a contribution. We wanted him to have opportunities to not worry about money the way we did. The first real signs of trouble came around 1990 when Michael was 8. Lisa and I started arguing more. Small disagreements turned into bigger fights. She thought I was too strict with Michael, expecting too much from a child. I thought she coddled him, not preparing him for the real world. Looking back, we were both right and both wrong the way parents often are. Michael showed an early talent for music. By 9, he was playing piano by ear, picking out melodies from songs on the radio. I worked overtime for 3 months to buy him a second-hand upright piano. The look on his face when we unveiled it in the living room that was worth every extra hour of labor. I found him a piano teacher, an old Russian woman named Mrs. Petrov, who lived a few blocks away and charged less than she should have because she said Michael had the gift. Lisa increasingly resented my long work hours. "You're missing his childhood," she would say, when I missed a school performance or parent-teacher conference because of work. She was right, but what could I do? Someone had to pay the mortgage, the piano lessons saved for college. The construction business was competitive, and showing anything less than total commitment meant risking your position. At least, that's what I told myself. The truth was more complicated. Work was straightforward. Pour the foundation frame, the walls follow the blueprints. Fatherhood had no blueprints. At work, I knew exactly what I was doing. At home, I sometimes felt lost, especially as Michael grew older and his needs became more complex than a diaper change or a bedtime story. So I retreated to what I knew, where I felt competent. It was the first of many mistakes that would cost me everything. By 1995, when Michael was entering his teenage years, the foundation of our family was cracking like badly poured concrete. The construction company I worked for, Patterson Construction, was struggling. Housing development had slowed in our area, and layoffs were becoming common. I was working longer hours to prove myself indispensable, taking on the most difficult projects, volunteering for overtime. I started moonlighting on weekends, doing small renovation jobs for cash, deck builds, bathroom remodels, anything to bring in extra money. I told myself it was temporary just until things stabilized, but temporary stretched into permanent, and I was rarely home. Michael was changing too. The sweet open child who wanted to tell me everything was becoming moody, secretive the way teenagers do. He would lock himself in his room playing music too loud, emerging only for meals where he would answer questions with one-word responses. I didn't know how to talk to this new version of my son. Lisa and I were fighting more frequently. What started as discussions after Michael went to bed turned into full arguments he could hear through the walls. We tried to keep it civil, but resentment has a way of leaking into every interaction. "You're never here," she would say. "Someone has to pay the bills," I would counter. "He needs a father, not just a paycheck. What he needs is security, a roof over his head, college tuition." Round and round we went, neither of us listening, both of us hurting. I started drinking more heavily, just a beer after work at first, then 2, then stopping at Flanagan's bar on the way home most nights. I told myself I deserved it after working hard all day. I needed to unwind before facing the tension at home. But 1 beer became 3, and some nights I wouldn't make it home until after Michael was asleep. What I didn't know then was that Lisa had formed a close relationship with her school principal, Robert Williams. She said they were just friends, that he understood the challenges of education in a way I never could. I believed her because I wanted to, because the alternative was too painful to consider. The breaking point came in April 1998. Michael was 16, a high school sophomore, growing more distant by the day. I had missed his piano recital the previous weekend because a client needed emergency repairs after a storm damaged their roof. When I got home that night later than promised, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I found Lisa sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of cold tea in front of her. "We need to talk," she said. 4 words that changed lives. She wanted a divorce. She said she had been unhappy for years, that we had grown apart, that staying together for Michael was doing him more harm than good. I asked if there was someone else. The pause before she answered told me everything. "Robert and I have feelings for each other," she finally admitted. "But that's not why. This is about us, about how we don't work anymore." Something broke inside me then. All the stress, the fear, the inadequacy I had been feeling exploded. I started yelling, saying things I immediately regretted. I called her names, accused her of lying, of planning this for years. I knocked over a chair, punched the wall, behavior I'm not proud of. What I didn't know was that Michael had come home early from band practice. He stood in the doorway watching his father lose control, seeing his mother crying. I will never forget the look on his face. Fear, disappointment, and something worse, something that looked like he was seeing me clearly for the first time and didn't like what he saw. He stepped between us, this child, suddenly a man, and told me to get out. His voice was shaking but determined. Just go, Dad. Just go. I left that night, checked into a motel, sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall until sunrise. By the time I returned the next day to talk calmly, Michael had already chosen sides. He barely looked at me as I collected some clothes, standing protectively near his mother. The divorce proceedings began the following week. Lisa got the house primary custody of Michael. I moved into a small apartment across town, the kind of place you live when you're just starting out. Not when your life is falling apart at 44. The custody arrangement allowed me visitation every other weekend and Wednesday dinners. Those visits were painfully awkward. Michael would sit across from me at Denny's or Pizza Hut, answering my questions with minimal effort, checking his watch frequently. I tried everything, asking about school music friends. He gave me nothing. The silence between us grew like a wall, brick by brick, visit by visit. I tried to attend his school events, sitting in the back of auditoriums for band concerts, trying to catch his eye afterward. He would acknowledge me with a nod, then turn away to celebrate with friends and his mother. Lisa was always civil in these public settings, but the coldness between us was palpable. And always Robert was nearby, the new man in their lives, playing the role I had failed at. Michael's coldness turned to open hostility over time. He would cancel our visits last minute, claiming homework or band practice. When I did see him, he would bring up moments I had missed, failures he had cataloged. Remember when you missed my 10th birthday because of work? Remember when you promised to help with my science project and then were too tired? A litany of my failings as a father, each one a knife. The final break came when Michael graduated high school in 2000. He was 18, co-valedictorian, headed to Berkeley for college on a partial music scholarship. I was so proud of him I could barely contain it. Despite everything, despite the broken home and divided attention, he had thrived. I had requested the day off work months in advance, had my suit cleaned, bought him an expensive watch as a graduation gift. Then the day before the ceremony, a critical support beam was installed incorrectly at our biggest job site. As foreman, I had to be there or risk the whole project being delayed, dozens of workers sent home without pay, and possibly losing my job in the still shaky construction market. I called Michael, explained the situation, promised I would see the video his mother would take. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Sure, Dad. Work comes first. Always has. Michael, that's not fair. This is an emergency. I would be there if I could. Save it. I stopped expecting you to show up a long time ago. He hung up. I tried calling back, but he had turned off his phone. I worked through the night with the crew, fixing the mistake, ensuring the structure was safe. By morning, bleary-eyed and exhausted, it was too late to make the 2-hour drive to the ceremony. I sent a large bouquet of flowers to the school with a note telling Michael how proud I was. Later, I found out from a mutual friend that he had given the flowers to a teacher without reading the card. The phone call came that night. Michael, voice slurring slightly from graduation celebrations, unleashed years of pent-up anger. You never cared about me, not really, he said. I was just something you paid for, like the mortgage or the car. An obligation. Well, guess what? I release you from that obligation. You don't have to pretend anymore. I tried to explain, to defend myself, to tell him about the countless nights I lay awake, worrying about providing for him, the pride I felt watching him grow into a talented, intelligent young man. But alcohol and years of resentment had closed his ears to anything I might say. I'm going to California, he said finally. Don't call me. Don't write. I don't want to hear your excuses anymore. I have a real family now with Mom and Robert. I don't need you. The line went dead. I called back repeatedly, but he never answered. I left voicemails that grew increasingly desperate, sent emails that went unanswered, wrote letters that were returned unopened. For 2 years, I tried to reach him. I sent birthday cards, Christmas presents, graduation money for his college fund. Nothing came back, but nothing was acknowledged either. It was like shouting into a void. I drove to Berkeley once, hung around campus, hoping to accidentally run into him. I felt like a stalker, a ghost haunting my own son's life. Then in 2005, a small white envelope arrived in my mailbox, a wedding invitation. Michael, just 23, was marrying a woman named Amanda Johnston. The invitation was formal, impersonal, the kind you send to distant relatives or work colleagues. No note, no personal touch. But it was something. A crack in the wall. A possible way back. I bought a new suit, had my haircut, spent too much on a wedding gift, a set of high-end cookware the registry indicated they wanted. I drove to California alone, checked into the hotel, listed on the invitation, rehearsed what I might say if given the chance. The ceremony was beautiful in a small church near the Berkeley campus. I sat in the back far from Lisa and Robert, who occupied the front row on the groom's side. Michael looked handsome in his tuxedo, so grown up it took my breath away. His bride was lovely, dark-haired and smiling, clearly adoring my son. I watched him pledge his life to her, tears streaming down my face for all I had missed, all I had lost. At the reception, I waited patiently for my chance to speak with him. When I finally approached, his smile faltered for just a moment before a polite mask slipped into place. "Thank you for coming," he said formally, as if I were his mother's second cousin, not his father. "I wouldn't have missed it," I replied, my carefully rehearsed speech evaporating. "You look happy. She's beautiful." "Yes, she is." A pause, uncomfortable. "Well, enjoy the reception." He started to turn away to greet other guests. I grabbed his arm gently. "Michael, please, can we talk just for a minute?" His face hardened. "I think we've said everything that needs saying. I invited you because Amanda thought it was the right thing to do. But let's be clear, I don't need you in my life anymore." He walked away back to his bride, his new life, a life that had no place for me. I sat through dinner at the table farthest from the wedding party, surrounded by distant acquaintances who clearly wondered who this sad, silent man was. I left before the cake was cut, unable to bear any more. That night in my hotel room, I drank every mini bottle in the minibar, then found a nearby liquor store for more. For the next month, I barely sobered up. I called in sick to work so often they put me on probation. I stopped paying bills, stopped answering my phone. I was drowning, and I didn't care if I went under for good. It took a job site accident to wake me up. I showed up hungover, made a calculation error that could have been disastrous if a colleague hadn't caught it. My boss called me into his office afterward. "Get help, Stephen," he said bluntly. "You're a good worker, one of my best when you're clear-headed. But I can't have you endangering yourself and others. Get help or don't come back." That night I found an AA meeting. Sat in the back, didn't speak, but I came back the next night, and the next. On the third meeting I stood up and said, "My name is Stephen, and I'm an alcoholic." It was the first honest thing I had said in months. AA saved my life. My sponsor, Jack, a recovered alcoholic who had lost his family to his addiction and then rebuilt a relationship with his children over many years, became my lifeline. The 12 steps forced me to confront how my actions, not just Lisa's affair or Michael's anger, had contributed to the destruction of my family. I wrote amends letters to both Lisa and Michael as part of my recovery. Lisa sent back a brief note acknowledging my apology, but stating that too much water had passed under the bridge for any real reconciliation. Michael never responded. I sent the letter to his last known address, but I had no way of knowing if he even received it. The years after hitting rock bottom were a slow climb back to some semblance of a life. I stayed sober one day at a time, as they say in the program. I threw myself into work, earning back the respect of my colleagues and a promotion to project manager. The company I worked for, recognizing my renewed dedication, gave me increasing responsibility. To fill the empty evenings when the loneliness threatened to overwhelm me, I took up woodworking. There was something therapeutic about transforming raw lumber into something useful, something beautiful. I started with small projects, picture frames and cutting boards, gradually working up to furniture. Each piece I completed felt like tangible proof that I could still create something worthwhile. I joined a hiking group through my AA community, forcing myself out of isolation on weekends. The physical exertion and natural beauty of Oregon's trails became another form of therapy. In these new friends, most of whom had their own stories of law, loss, and redemption, I found a different kind of family. Not a replacement for what I had lost, but a community that understood brokenness and the hard work of repair. Every Christmas, birthday, and occasional random dates when I was thinking particularly hard about Michael, I would send a card to his last known address. I never knew if he received them, never got any acknowledgement, but it was important to me that he know if he ever wanted to know that I was still thinking of him, still loving him from afar. In 2011, at age 55, I made a big change. Patterson Construction was downsizing, offering early retirement packages. Instead of taking one, I used my savings to start my own small construction business, specializing in green building techniques that were becoming popular in Oregon. Davis. Sustainable construction was just me and 3 employees, at first focusing on smaller projects where we could implement environmentally friendly methods without the overhead of the bigger companies. I moved from Portland to Eugene, a smaller city with a growing market for the kind of construction I wanted to do. It was a chance to start fresh in a place without memories on every corner. I bought a modest 2-bedroom house near a park, set up a woodworking shop in the garage, planted a vegetable garden in the backyard. It wasn't the life I had imagined for myself, but it was a good life, a quiet life. Occasionally, I would search for Michael online. Social media made it possible to glimpse his life from a distance. He had finished his music degree at Berkeley, then gotten a master's at UCLA. He was working in the music industry in Los Angeles, something to do with production. There were few photos, but in the ones I found, he looked healthy, successful. I saw pictures of his wife Amanda, learned they had a daughter named Emma, born in 2013. I became a grandfather and didn't even know until I saw a birth announcement shared by a mutual friend online. I bought a small wooden train, carved and sanded it myself, painted it bright primary colors. I mailed it to the address I had from the wedding invitation with a note congratulating them and expressing my hope to meet my granddaughter someday. Like everything else, it disappeared into the void of our estrangement. I never knew if it reached them, never knew if Emma ever played with the train her grandfather made with his own hands. My business grew modestly successful. I developed a reputation for quality work and ethical practices, hiring at-risk youth and teaching them the trade. I wasn't getting rich, but I was comfortable, able to put money aside for retirement. I lived simply, my needs few. The most extravagant thing I did was donate regularly to music programs for underprivileged children, a nod to the talent I had recognized and tried to nurture in my own son. I continued with therapy, working through my grief and guilt with a patient counselor named Dr. Marshall. He helped me develop a philosophy of acceptance without resignation. You can acknowledge the reality of your estrangement without accepting that it will never change, he would tell me. But you also can't put your life on hold waiting for a reconciliation that may never come. It was a delicate balance, maintaining hope without being paralyzed by it. I kept the door open on my side while building a life that didn't depend on Michael walking through it. In 2019, at age 63, I had a minor heart attack. Nothing dramatic, just chest pain while on a hike that sent me to the emergency room. A blocked artery, a stent placed a warning from the doctor about stress and diet. But it was a wake-up call, a reminder of mortality that prompted me to get my affairs in order. I updated my will, leaving my house and business to Michael, with provisions for his children's education. I had no one else to leave it to, and despite everything, he was my son, my only family. The lawyer raised an eyebrow at leaving everything to someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 2 decades, but I was firm. Blood is blood, I said, and I have hope that someday, somehow, we might find our way back to each other. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be, or how that way back would be paved with gold, not reconciliation. They say lightning never strikes the same place twice, but sometimes life has other plans. Plans that defy all odds and statistics. For over 30 years, through marriage and divorce, prosperity and hardship, sobriety, and the long, lonely years that followed, I had maintained one small ritual, buying a single lottery ticket each week. Always the same store, Marv's Market on Main Street, always the same type of ticket, always letting the computer generate the numbers. I never expected to win. It was more of a meditation, a moment to imagine possibilities, a dollar's worth of hope. On November 15, 2023, that hope paid off in a way I never could have imagined. I was at home eating a simple dinner of baked chicken and roasted vegetables when the lottery numbers were announced on the evening news. I wasn't even paying attention, had the TV on, mostly for background noise. But something made me look up just as they displayed the winning numbers. I glanced at my ticket, then back at the screen. Then again, more carefully. 6 numbers, all matching. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, food forgotten. This couldn't be right. I must have misread. I found my reading glasses, checked again. Still matching. The news anchor was saying something about the $14 million jackpot, how there appeared to be a single winner, how the ticket had been purchased in Eugene. My hands started shaking so badly I had to put the ticket down on the table. I felt lightheaded, my heart racing dangerously. Breathe, I told myself out loud. Just breathe. The next morning, after a mostly sleepless night, I called the Oregon Lottery Commission. They confirmed I needed to come to Salem to verify the ticket and begin the claims process. I drove there in a daze, constantly checking that the ticket was still in my wallet, half convinced this was an elaborate dream I would wake from at any moment. But it wasn't a dream. The lottery officials verified my ticket, took my photograph, which I later regretted, explained the process for claiming such a large prize. I had options: take the full amount spread over 30 annual payments, or a lump sum of about $8.5 million after taxes. At my age, the lump sum made more sense. I signed papers, met with financial advisors they provided, started the process that would transform my modest life into something unrecognizable. The local news ran the story. Local contractor wins $14 million jackpot. There was my photo looking shell-shocked and 10 years older than my actual age next to the lottery check. The story mentioned Davis Sustainable Construction, my years in Eugene, the fact that I was a regular customer at Marv's Market. It didn't mention Michael or my estrangement. That part of my life wasn't visible to reporters doing a quick human interest piece. The money hit my account in December, just before Christmas. By then I had assembled a team of professionals to help me manage it: financial advisor, specializing in sudden wealth, an accountant, a lawyer to update my will and establish trusts. On their advice, I kept my modest house, but bought a small lake cabin about an hour from Eugene, a peaceful retreat where I could escape the surprising number of distant relatives and old acquaintances who suddenly remembered my existence. I made donations to causes I cared about: the local A chapter that had supported me for years, a recovery center for teens, a music program for low-income students. I established a scholarship fund for children of construction workers, remembering my own struggles to save for Michael's education. I bought new equipment for my business, but kept it small, not wanting to expand beyond what I could personally oversee. For the most part, I maintained my simple lifestyle. I still drove my 10-year-old Subaru, still shopped at the same grocery store, still wore Carhartt work clothes most days. The wealth was surreal numbers on paper that didn't feel connected to my daily reality. A week after the news broke, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Congratulations on your win. Happy for you, Lisa." My ex-wife breaking her silence after all these years. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to respond. Finally, I typed back a simple "thank you" and left it at that. She didn't reply. Then came the emails, the phone calls, the Facebook friend requests from people I barely remembered from high school, from previous jobs, from my old neighborhood in Portland. Everyone had a business opportunity, a charity case, a personal hardship that my newfound wealth could solve. I began to understand why lottery winners often describe their jackpots as mixed blessings. I was prepared for all of this, had been warned by the financial advisors, and had read stories of lottery winners overwhelmed by sudden attention. What I wasn't prepared for was the email that arrived 3 days before Christmas from an address I didn't recognize, but with a subject line that stopped my heart: Dad, Michael Davis. I sat down at my kitchen table, took several deep breaths, and opened it. "Dad, I saw the news about your lottery win. Congratulations. It's been a long time. Too long, maybe. Amanda and I are living in Seattle now with our kids, Emma 10 and James 7. They've been asking about their grandfather. If you're not busy, we'd love to have you join us for Christmas dinner. Let me know. Michael." No mention of our estrangement, no acknowledgement of the 25 years of silence, no explanation for the sudden desire to reconnect. Just a casual invitation, as if we had merely fallen out of touch, not deliberately cut all ties. My emotions cycled rapidly. Joy at the contact, suspicion about the timing, hope that this could be a new beginning, fear that I was being used for my money, and underneath it all, a profound longing to see my son, to meet my grandchildren, to have some semblance of family again. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I called Jack, my AA sponsor, now in his 70s, but still sharp as a tack. "Of course he's after your money," Jack said bluntly. "The timing makes that pretty clear, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't go." "What do you mean?" "I mean, does it matter why the door is opening if you've been waiting outside for 25 years? Go, meet your grandkids, see your son, just don't bring your checkbook." After a few days of consideration, I replied to Michael's email accepting the invitation. We exchanged a few more messages arranging details. His tone remained cordial but distant, like a business correspondence rather than a family reunion. I tried not to read too much into it, tried to temper my expectations. I spent hours selecting gifts for my grandchildren, wanting them to be meaningful but not extravagant. For Emma, I found a beginner's jewelry making kit, remembering how Michael had enjoyed creating things at that age. For James, a set of building blocks that could be configured into different structures, something to stimulate creativity and spatial thinking. For Michael and Amanda, a handcrafted wooden serving bowl I had made myself finished with food-safe oils, something personal that money couldn't buy. As the day approached, I found myself unable to sleep, plagued by anxiety and hope in equal measure. What would I say to Michael after all these years? How would I explain our estrangement to my grandchildren? What if the whole visit was just a prelude to asking for money? What if I couldn't control my emotions, said the wrong thing, ruined this chance at reconciliation? The drive from Eugene to Seattle on December 23rd was long and tense. I checked into a hotel rather than staying with Michael as he had offered. I needed my own space or retreat if things went poorly. I sat in the hotel room that evening, staring at the phone, half tempted to call and cancel to protect myself from potential hurt. But the thought of seeing Michael, of meeting my grandchildren, was stronger than my fear. The next morning, Christmas Eve, I stood on the doorstep of a handsome craftsman home in a nice Seattle neighborhood, gifts in hand, heart pounding as if I had run a marathon. I rang the bell and waited, questioning every life choice that had led me to this moment. The door opened, and there was Michael, my son, a man now in his early 40s with flecks of gray in his dark hair lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at his wedding. We stared at each other for a long moment, two strangers connected by blood and divided by time. "Dad," he said finally, and stepped aside to let me in. Stepping into Michael's home was like entering a foreign country where I recognized the language but couldn't quite speak it fluently. The house was beautifully decorated, tastefully furnished in a way that suggested money, but not ostentation. Christmas decorations were everywhere, a large tree by the front window covered in ornaments, stockings hung on the mantel, the scent of pine and cinnamon in the air. Michael had changed in ways that went beyond the physical. The angry young man was now composed, controlled, his emotions carefully managed behind a pleasant but reserved expression. He was taller than me now, or perhaps I had shrunk with age. His handshake was firm, professional, the kind you give a business associate rather than a long-lost father. "Let me introduce you to everyone," he said, leading me into the living room. "This is my wife, Amanda." A slender woman with warm brown eyes and a cautious smile stepped forward. She was beautiful in an understated way, casually elegant in jeans and a red sweater. "It's nice to finally meet you, Mr. Davis," she said, shaking my hand. The "finally" hung in the air, a subtle acknowledgement of all the years I had been absent. "Please call me Stephen," I replied, "and the pleasure is mine." "And these are our children," Michael continued. "Emma and James, this is your grandfather." Two children looked up from where they had been playing with new toys under the Christmas tree. Emma, 10 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's serious eyes, stood and approached me with surprising confidence. "Hello?" she said formally. "It's nice to meet you. Dad says you build things like Legos but for real houses." I smiled, unexpected tears pricking at my eyes. "That's right. I build houses and other buildings, and it's very, very nice to meet you too, Emma." James, 7 in all, energy bounded over less formally. "Do you have presents?" he asked, eyeing the bags I had set down. "James," Amanda admonished, "that's not polite." "It's okay," I laughed. "Yes, I do have presents, but maybe we should save them for tomorrow on Christmas Day." "I guess," he sighed dramatically. Then, with the directness only children possess, "Where have you been all this time? Grandma Lisa and Grandpa Robert visit all the time, but we've never met you before." The room went silent. Michael and Amanda exchanged glances. I knelt down to James's level, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and have disagreements that keep them apart," I said. "Your dad and I had some problems a long time ago before you were born. But I'm very happy to be here now to finally meet you." James considered this, then nodded. "Okay. Do you want to see my dinosaur collection? Just like that, accepted into his world without the complications adults bring to relationships." "I would love to see your dinosaur collection," I replied. The next few hours passed in a strange mix of ordinary family interaction and underlying tension. We ate lunch, a casual affair of sandwiches and soup. The children showed me their toys, their rooms, their artwork hung on the refrigerator. I answered their questions about building houses, about the tools I used, about whether I had built any castles. Regrettably, no. All the while, Michael maintained a polite distance, physically present, but emotionally somewhere else. Amanda was warmer, asking thoughtful questions about my business, my life in Eugene. I noticed the house was filled with music, much of it classical piano that reminded me of Michael's early talent. "Do you still play?" I asked him during a quiet moment when the children were occupied with a game. A flicker of something crossed his face, something real beneath the polite mask. Sometimes, not professionally. I work on the production side now. I have a small record label specializing in independent classical artists. That's wonderful, I said sincerely. You always had an ear for it. He nodded, and for just a moment, I thought we might connect over this shared memory. But then James called him to adjudicate a dispute with his sister, and the moment passed. As evening approached, Amanda prepared an elaborate Christmas Eve dinner. The dining room table was set beautifully with fine china and crystal that must have been wedding gifts. We ate roast beef potatoes, fresh vegetables, making stilted conversation about safe topics: the children's school, the Seattle weather, neutral memories from Michael's childhood that didn't touch on the painful parts. Throughout dinner, I noticed Michael making subtle references to finances. He mentioned the cost of private school tuition, the competitive housing market in Seattle, the expense of producing classical albums for a niche market. None of it was direct, all of it seemingly casual, but a pattern was emerging that made me increasingly uncomfortable. After dinner, we exchanged some gifts. I had brought small things for Christmas Eve, saving the main presents for Christmas Day, as was our old family tradition. The children seemed delighted with the books and small games I had selected. Michael and Amanda opened a bottle of wine I'd brought, an expensive vintage recommended by my hotel concierge. "This is quite something," Michael commented, examining the label. "You've developed expensive taste." There was an edge to his voice I couldn't quite interpret. "The gentleman at the hotel suggested it," I said. "I don't know much about wine myself." "Well, your hotel clearly caters to a wealthy clientele," he replied with a tight smile. Once the children were in bed, excited about Santa's impending visit. But finally succumbing to sleep, the three adults sat in the living room with glasses of that expensive wine. The Christmas tree lights cast colored shadows across the room, a scene that should have been warm and intimate, but instead felt fraught with unspoken tension. "So," Michael said, breaking a lengthy silence, "tell us about this lottery win. It must have been quite a shock." I described the experience, keeping it simple, downplaying the amount, though I knew he was well aware of the figure from news reports. "What are you doing with it all?" he asked. "That's a lot of money for one person." "Investing most of it," I said carefully. "I bought a small cabin by a lake, made some donations to causes I care about." "Smart," Michael nodded. "Though real estate in the Seattle area is a particularly good investment right now, the tech industry keeps driving prices up." Amanda shot him a look I couldn't quite interpret. He ignored it. "Actually," he continued, setting down his wine glass, "I wanted to talk to you about something, an opportunity." Here it was. The real reason for the invitation. The thing I had both expected and dreaded. My record label, Resonance Records, has been doing well critically, but classical music is a difficult market financially. We've discovered an incredible young pianist, reminds me a bit of myself at that age, actually, but with proper development, real prodigy material. I want to produce her debut album, get her placed with the right performance venues, really launch her career properly, but it requires significant upfront investment. "How significant?" I asked, my voice steady despite the disappointment flooding through me. $2 million, he said, watching my face carefully. "But the return potential is substantial, especially if she develops as we expect. And of course, it would be a family investment, something we could build together, maybe even leave to Emma and James someday. A legacy." A legacy. The word hung in the air between us. What he was really offering was a chance to buy my way back into his life, to purchase a relationship with my grandchildren. "I see," I said. "And is this why you invited me for Christmas after 25 years of silence?" His expression hardened slightly. "That's not fair. You know why we haven't been in touch. You chose your priorities long ago." "I made mistakes," I acknowledged. "Serious ones. But I tried to make amends, tried to stay in contact. You cut me out completely." "You were never there when it mattered," he countered, old anger seeping into his voice. "Always working, always at the bar. Then you showed up at my wedding like you deserved to be part of my life." "I was working to provide for you," I said, the old defense rising automatically. "Everything I did was for you and your mother." "That's what you always said, but you weren't there. Robert was there, for school events, for help with homework, for actual parenting." Amanda stood up suddenly. "I'm going to check on the kids," she said, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. After she left, Michael and I sat in tense silence. Finally, he spoke, his voice calmer. Look, the past is the past. I'm not inviting you here to rehash old grievances. I'm offering a chance to move forward, to be part of something together, to make up for lost time. Make up for lost time. As if decades of absence could be erased with a business transaction. I felt suddenly tired, the weight of years and disappointment heavy on my shoulders. I'll think about it, I said finally. It's a lot to process. Of course. He nodded, all business now. Take the night. We can discuss details tomorrow. I returned to my hotel room that night with a heaviness in my heart I hadn't felt since those dark days after Michael's wedding. The reunion I had dreamed of for 25 years was nothing like my fantasies. There was no emotional reconciliation, no forgiveness, no genuine desire to rebuild our relationship. Just a business proposition wrapped in Christmas paper. I slept poorly, tossing and turning, replaying the evening's conversation. Before dawn, I put on warm clothes and went for a walk in the quiet Seattle streets. Christmas lights twinkling in windows, the occasional sound of excited children already awake and discovering Santa's bounty. I walked for hours, thinking, remembering, grieving for what was lost and what never would be. By the time I returned to the hotel to shower and change for Christmas dinner, I'd reached a decision. A difficult one, but the only one that felt right. I gathered the presents I had brought, including the handcrafted wooden bowl, and drove back to Michael's house, a strange calm settling over me. I knew what I needed to say, what I needed to do, both for myself and ultimately for Michael too. When I arrived, the children were already deep into Christmas morning chaos, wrapping paper everywhere, new toys being examined and played with. They greeted me with more enthusiasm than yesterday, the initial shyness worn off. I distributed my gifts, watching with genuine pleasure as Emma explored her jewelry-making kit and James began constructing elaborate structures with his building blocks. Michael and Amanda opened the wooden bowl I had crafted, making appropriate sounds of appreciation, though I could tell Michael was distracted, likely anxious to continue our conversation from the previous night. As the morning progressed toward dinner preparations, I could feel him watching me, waiting for the right moment to bring up the investment opportunity again. That moment came after Christmas dinner, a lavish turkey with all the trimmings that Amanda had clearly worked hard on. The children were occupied with new toys in the living room, and the three adults sat at the cleared dining table with coffee and pie. So, Michael began, have you had a chance to think about what we discussed? Amanda looked uncomfortable, staring into her coffee cup. I wondered how much of this had been her idea versus Michael's. I have, I said. And before I give you my answer, I want to tell you something. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts, knowing this might be the last chance I had to say these things to my son. I failed you as a father in many ways. I worked too much, drank too much, wasn't present enough. The divorce and how I handled it hurt you deeply. I know that, and I've spent decades regretting it. I've sent you letters, cards, gifts over the years, tried to tell you how sorry I was, how much I still loved you. I never knew if you received them. Michael shifted in his seat, but didn't interrupt. When I got your invitation, I was overjoyed. After 25 years of silence, a chance to see you, to meet my grandchildren, possibly to begin healing this broken relationship. I didn't care about the timing, didn't want to question why now after I'd won the lottery. I just wanted to see you. I paused, looking directly at my son, this stranger who shared my blood, but who I barely knew anymore. But I see now that's not what this is. This isn't about reconciliation or family. It's about money. You don't want me back in your life, you want what I can provide financially. And I understand that I do. Why would you want a relationship with someone who disappointed you so profoundly? Why open yourself up to that potential hurt again? Michael started to speak, but I held up my hand. Please let me finish. I won't be investing in your record label, not because it isn't a worthy venture, I'm sure it is, but because I won't buy my way back into your life. That's not a real relationship. And deep down, you know that too. The mask of polite business interest dropped from Michael's face, replaced by barely contained anger. So that's it. You show up after 25 years to judge me. I invite you into my home, introduce you to my children, and you sit there acting morally superior. I'm not judging you, Michael. I'm refusing to pretend. I would love nothing more than to have a real relationship with you and your family. But it needs to be based on something genuine, not financial interest. Easy for you to say now that you're rich, he scoffed. Where was this desire for a genuine relationship when I was growing up? When I needed a father, not a wallet? The irony of his accusation given the current situation wasn't lost on me, but I didn't point it out. There was no winning this argument, no perfect response that would magically heal 25 years of hurt and absence. "I'm going to go," I said quietly. "I've left some additional gifts for the children under the tree. College funds I've set up for both of them regardless of our relationship. That's not conditional." I stood nodding to Amanda, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. "Thank you for your hospitality. The dinner was wonderful." Michael stood too, his face flushed with anger. "That's it, you're just leaving. I think it's for the best right now, but my door remains open." Michael, as it has been for 25 years. If you ever want to talk, really talk about anything other than money, I'll be there. I walked to the living room where Emma and James were playing with their new toys. I knelt down, hugging each of them gently. "It was wonderful to meet you both," I said. "I hope I'll see you again sometime." "Are you leaving already?" Emma asked, surprisingly perceptive. "Yes. I need to get back to my home. But I want you both to know that I'm your grandfather and I love you very much even though we just met." James looked confused. "Will you come back tomorrow?" "Not tomorrow," I said gently, "but hopefully someday soon." I left without further confrontation, Michael standing stiffly by the dining room entrance, Amanda beside him looking troubled. As I drove back to my hotel, I felt a complex mix of emotions: sadness at the failed reunion, relief at having been honest, grief for the relationship that still seemed out of reach, but also a strange peace. I had done what I could. The rest wasn't up to me. I spent that Christmas night alone in my hotel room, not quite the holiday I had imagined when I received Michael's invitation. I ordered room service, watched old Christmas movies on TV, and tried not to dwell on the anger in my son's eyes as I had left his house. I reminded myself that healing takes time, that decades of hurt couldn't be resolved in a single holiday visit, and that I had done the right thing by refusing to enter into a financial relationship that would only complicate any chance at genuine reconciliation. The next morning, I was preparing to check out and begin the long drive back to Eugene when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the Seattle area code made my heart skip. I answered cautiously, half expecting Michael's continued anger. "Mr. Davis? This is Amanda, Michael's wife." Her voice was hesitant, uncomfortable. I sat down on the edge of the hotel bed. "Amanda, is everything all right?" "Yes. Well, no, not really." She paused. "I'm at a coffee shop near your hotel. I was wondering if we could talk before you leave town, just the two of us." I agreed, curiosity overriding my wariness. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from her in a quiet corner of an almost empty coffee shop, most people still at home enjoying the day after Christmas. Amanda looked tired, the strain of the previous day's tension visible in the shadows under her eyes. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup as if seeking warmth. "I wanted to apologize," she began, "for yesterday, for all of it really. The invitation wasn't my idea." "I gathered that," I said gently. "Michael has been struggling," she continued. "The record label is in trouble, serious trouble. He's mortgaged our house, used our savings. Classical music is his passion, but it's a difficult business. When he saw the news about your lottery win..." She trailed off, looking ashamed. "He saw an opportunity," I finished for her. "Yes. But it's more complicated than that. He's been following your career for years, you know, keeping track of your construction business, your green building initiatives. He's never admitted it, but he has Google alerts set up for your name. When you had that heart attack a few years ago, he was a wreck for weeks, though he wouldn't talk about it." This revelation stunned me. All those years I thought I had been completely forgotten, erased from my son's life, and he had been secretly monitoring mine. "Why didn't he ever reach out?" I asked. Amanda sighed. "Pride, stubbornness, fear probably. The longer the silence went on, the harder it became to break it. And there's anger too, real anger about your absence when he was growing up. That's not fabricated." "I know," I acknowledged. "I made serious mistakes. The thing is," she continued, "the children adore you already, especially James. He talked about you all evening after you left, about how you're a real builder, just like his Legos. He asked if you could teach him to make things out of wood." Unexpected tears filled my eyes. I blinked them away, not wanting to break down in a public coffee shop. Emma too, Amanda added. She wants to know if you'll come to her piano recital next month. She's musical, like her father. I would be honored, I said, my voice rough with emotion. Michael doesn't know I'm here, she admitted. He's still angry, but I thought you should know that beneath that anger there's a little boy who still wants his father's approval, who still hurts from your absence. And there are 2 children who deserve to know their grandfather. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small package. James made this for you last night. He was upset you left before he could give it to you. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a crude but recognizable wooden figure made from the building blocks I had given him glued together and painted. A man with gray hair holding what appeared to be tools. It's you, Amanda explained unnecessarily. He wanted you to have it to remember us by. I held the small figure carefully, this precious gift from a grandson I had just met. Thank you for bringing this, and for coming to talk to me. I think there's a way forward here, she said. Not through money or business deals, but through the children. They're neutral ground. They don't care about old grievances or who was right or wrong decades ago. They just want a grandfather. I nodded, understanding what she was offering, a side door back into my son's life through his children. I've set up trust funds for both of them, I told her, for college, for their future. It's not conditional on anything. Whether Michael and I reconcile or not, those funds are theirs. That's very generous, she said. But what they really need is you, your time, your stories, your knowledge. Money is just money. We talked for another hour, making tentative plans. Emma's piano recital next month, maybe a spring visit where I could teach James some basic woodworking. Small steps, building a relationship with my grandchildren that might eventually help heal the rift with their father. As we parted, Amanda hugged me briefly. He'll come around, she said. Just give him time. I drove back to Eugene that day with a lighter heart, the small wooden figure on my dashboard reminding me that not all was lost, that there was still hope for connection, still possibility for healing. 3 months later, my phone rang on a Sunday evening. It was Michael. The conversation was brief, awkward, but it was a start. I'm sorry, he said after an uncomfortable silence. About Christmas, about the investment pitch. Amanda told me she met with you. It's okay, I said. I understand the business is important to you. It is, but it's not worth using family that way. Another pause. Emma's recital is next weekend. She'd really like you to be there. I wouldn't miss it, I promised. And maybe we could talk, really talk. I'd like that, I said, careful not to push to expect too much. The recital was lovely. Emma playing a simple Chopin piece with concentration and skill that reminded me so much of Michael at that age. Afterward, while Amanda took the children for ice cream, Michael and I sat in a quiet corner of the recital hall. I've been unfair to you, he said finally. Yes, you made mistakes when I was growing up, but holding on to that anger for 25 years, cutting you out completely, that was wrong. I'm beginning to understand how hard parenting is, how easy it is to mess up despite the best intentions. We all do the best we can with what we know at the time, I said. I wish I had known better then. The record label is failing, he admitted. I've put everything into it and it's not working. I was desperate at Christmas, saw you as a solution rather than as my father. That was wrong too. What will you do now? I asked. Start over. Get a job with an established label, learn the business properly before trying again. It's humbling, but necessary. If you need help, I offered carefully, not as an investor, but as a father, I'm here. He shook his head. No, this is something I need to fix myself, but thank you. It wasn't a full reconciliation, not yet, but it was a beginning, an opening a crack in the wall that had separated us for 25 years. We agreed to family therapy sessions to work through the old hurts gradually, professionally. I began visiting Seattle monthly, building relationships with my grandchildren, slowly rebuilding trust with my son. The lottery money, ironically, became almost an afterthought. Yes, it had triggered the reconnection, opened the door in an unexpected way. But the real wealth in my life now was sitting in a recital hall, listening to my granddaughter play piano, teaching my grandson how to sand wood properly in the small workshop I set up in my lake house, seeing the wariness in my son's eyes gradually fade into something like acceptance, maybe someday even forgiveness. What I learned through all of this is that true wealth has nothing to do with money. Money can't buy genuine connection. It can't erase past mistakes or heal deep wounds. Those things take time, honesty, and consistent effort. They require showing up, being present, doing the hard work of reconciliation without shortcuts or financial band-aids. 25 years is a long time to be estranged from someone you love. It's a lifetime of birthdays, holidays, ordinary Tuesdays, moments big and small that can never be recovered. But it's never too late to start again, to build something new on the ruins of what was lost. It won't be the same, it can't be. But it can be meaningful, valuable in its own way. I don't know what the future holds for Michael and me. Our relationship remains fragile, a delicate construction that requires careful tending. But I know this: when my grandchildren run to greet me at the door when Michael calls, just to check in when we share a meal together, without tension or ulterior motives, I feel richer than any lottery could ever make me. What would you do if someone who cut you off for decades suddenly wanted a relationship after you came into money? Would you give them a chance, or would you be suspicious of their motives? Let me know in the comments, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, it's never too late to begin healing old wounds. Never too late to find your way back to family. Never too late to choose forgiveness over bitterness.